They all seem to say the same thing, which I don't necessarily think is true, is that we can't have a model like that here in the UK because it's very different in Finland because they're right next to Russia, so they see the threat and that's why they're all motivated to join. And I don't think that's true because the way that they model it, like you said, it's a two-way deal, and they're so explicit about this that it is a two-way deal between the government and the citizen. So they combine sort of a state-led top-down model in that the state helps organize everything and make sure there are ways for people to participate, that the defense is done in the right way, that preparedness is done in the right way, resilience is. But then it's also a bottom-up sort of model of legitimacy. If you're expecting the whole of society to participate in defense and security, you have to make them believe that it's actually something worth defending. While Finland obviously has a very obvious contrast, because if you look over the border, you've got a very brutal dictatorship and a sort of an expansive empire. So next up, you can contrast yourselves. So it's like, well, we stand for freedom, democracy, and human rights and international law, and the opposite is literally just there.
Right
so
there.
that's going to be our identity.
Yeah.
But the Finnish identity is a lot more than that, and that's where I think other countries can learn from. Is you have to sort of define what your identity is and really sort of project that to get people involved. But on top of that as well, when you mention the societal cohesion, there's tons of stuff that they do. One of the things I was most interested by it because it's like the intersection of politics and defense, which I think is a line that people do not like to cross. Defense is, and don't get me wrong, military should be neutral. They shouldn't be political either way. But in terms of defense policy making, it's almost like this is defense and this is like social policy. And these are two very different things. Whereas the Finns go, no, those two things are completely intertwined. So socioeconomic equality, for example, is highly sought after in Finland and actively promoted. So they don't want people to become isolated from the system. In fact, while I was in Finland for my research, I interviewed the Secretary General of the Security Committee. So he and his team are in charge of creating the security strategy for society and sort of implementing comprehensive security. And I asked him, okay, what's the biggest threat to the comprehensive security model? Because this is essentially what your whole society is built on. So what's the greatest threat to it? And he said, in no uncertain terms, polarization and social isolation. Because he said, you need all the individuals to be connected to the system. So anything that disconnects them from the system, you're just weakening it. Similarly, I spoke to the Director General of Defence Policy, although he's now in a new role, when I was in Finland. And I said to him, what's the most important thing about total defence? Because that's the part of comprehensive security that he looks after. And he said willingness. So he said that defensive willingness of Finns, if Finns don't believe that the country is worth protecting, he said, then you can forget about total defence, you can forget about comprehensive security, it's not going to work. So there are obvious things like socioeconomic equality, like making sure you haven't got uber rich people and then incredibly poor people. Up until recently, Finland were on track to get rid of all homelessness in Finland, completely eradicate it. That has since changed. There's a new government who, I won't get into the politics of it, but their economic policy doesn't really complement that goal as the homelessness has increased. But up until recently, they were planning on doing that. And while people listening to this might go, well, that's very noble. That's a very noble cause. Like for Finland, it's like, yes, that is a noble cause, but they will absolutely have thought about that in security terms as well.
Yeah.